Hello, it's Katie here, and today I want to share a little beading tutorial with you. I want to teach you a nice basic beading technique that's called spiral stitch, or you might also hear it referred to as spiral staircase. Possibly it goes by some other names as well. I know I've certainly seen it called slightly different things, but it's basically creating a spiral with seed beads. It's actually the technique I've used in the necklace that I'm wearing, but I'll show you all of how it looks in a little bit more detail in a second. Now, I love this stitch for lots of reasons. It was actually literally one of the first techniques that I learned as a beginner many years ago, and I used it back then to create full pieces of jewellery. So just a spiral rope makes a gorgeous necklace or bracelet. But it's still something that I use today. I still use it for making complete jewellery, but I also use it a lot for adding ropes on that I can hang on pendants, or I can use to extend a focal section of beads. Lots of things that I can do with it. And there's also loads of different variations that you can try. So not only mixing up colours and creating different patterns in it, but also using different kinds of beads that create very different effects. So that's everything from different sized seed beads, the shaped seed beads, and even actually some of the two-hole seed beads I've managed to use in this technique. But the beauty of it is that it's all the same technique. So it's not like some stitches where you learn the basics and then you have to learn more and more until you can get to the advanced. This, once you've learnt the spiral stitch technique, that's it. All you need to do is explore different ways of using it. And if you're looking for jewellery to make as gifts or to sell at craft fairs, this is a lovely technique to use, because you can create stuff that looks very unique. You could create a full range just switching up beads in this. The technique remains the same, but your jewellery is all going to look very different. And the other nice thing about it is it works up quite quickly. So you don't have to spend days and days on this to create a necklace or a bracelet. You can literally do it in a few hours. So that's why it's a technique that I love using, and a technique that I really wanted to share with you as well. So in the rest of this video, I'm going to show you a few samples so you can see what you're aiming for. And then I'm going to give you a really comprehensive demonstration so you'll have everything you need to use the technique, and I'll show you how to add on a clasp as well, so you can actually make some jewellery. It's not just a random beading technique. Now, I've also written a blog post to sit alongside this, and in that I've explained a bit more about the different kinds of beads that you can use. I've also got several existing tutorials that you're welcome to try out if you like to work from written instructions. So I'll link to those in the blog post as well, but you'll get a little peek at what they are in just a second. So I think that's probably enough of an introduction from me. Let's get on and take a look at what spiral stitch or spiral staircase is and how you do it. Well, here we are. What's the one thing that all these pieces of jewellery have in common? The answer is the spiral stitch, or the staircase spiral, depending on what you want to call it. So let me show you these in a little bit more detail. I'm going to start up here with this necklace and bracelet, and these are made entirely from the spiral staircase. So if I just try and show you a bit more clearly here, we've got literally just the length of spiral stitch and we've got a simple clasp. And this set is actually one of the very first pieces of jewellery that I made, probably about 18 years ago now. So I just tell you that because I want you to really understand how simple this stitch is to do and how lovely it is to learn as a beginner. So in this piece we've got different colour combinations. We've actually also got some different bead types. So I've got some size 8 seed beads in here, but I've also got some slightly shaped basic seed beads. So in the blog I will talk more about the different kinds of beads you can use for this stitch. Then another variation, this necklace here. I've got a focal section and I've got a beaded clasp up here, and I've just used spiral stitch to create the rope that joins the sections together. So again, if I just bring it up a bit more closely, you can hopefully see the stitch. Once again, I've used different colours of beads in here. I've been using the beads that I used in the focal section, so the colouring all matches up nicely. Again, I did something similar with this carrier beads necklace. So I've got the whole section with the carrier beads, which is one stitch, even count peyote actually, or is it odd count? Peyote stitch anyway. And then I've used the spiral stitch just to make the rope to add on to that. So this necklace I used Delica beads for the carrier bead covers, and I've used those same Delica beads to make the spiral stitch again so that everything ties in together. And I've just finished this one off with a beaded clasp. So just take a quick look at the necklace you've just seen me wearing. Once again, we've actually got this main focal section, but this time I've used the spiral stitch not only for the rope, but also to add the decorative elements at the front. So hopefully you're beginning to see what a versatile, useful stitch it can be. And again, this was made with basic size 11 seed beads this time. But as I've mentioned briefly, you can use all kinds of beads for this. So if I just bring in this bracelet here, it may look a little different, but this is actually still the spiral staircase. What I've done is combined my seed beads with some 4mm pearls and 4mm crystal beads. So that actually gives it a really different look, but the technique remains exactly the same as I'm about to show you. And you don't have to stick to the more traditional beads either. In this bracelet, I've actually used super duos in my spiral, and that gave me another hole to work with, so I was able to add an extra bit of edging onto that. So we've still got this spiral effect, but if I just bring in the original as well, with the super duos it becomes much wider than a sample that's made with just basic ordinary seed beads. So really what I'm trying to say is, once you've learnt this technique, there is just so much you can do with it, so many different variations, and they all use the same technique, so it's simple. You're not having to learn anything difficult or become much more advanced to progress with this. You could create an entire range of jewellery just using this one spiral stitch technique. So now you've seen what you can do with it, let's move on and show you the actual technique itself. And don't forget, I do have patterns, tutorials with written instructions for all of these projects, so I'll give you the links to those in the blog post as well, in case you want to try some of my ideas as you start out. But let's get on and show you what you're going to be doing here. Okay, here we go. I've got my beading mat laid out with size 6 seed beads, so they're nice and big so that you can see clearly what I'm doing here. If you're starting this as a beginner, then actually size 6 are great to use, but size 8 are also quite nice, because although they're bigger beads, they will give you jewellery that's not chunky exactly, but good to wear. I'm also going to show you with different colours here. Again, that will help you to understand how the technique is structured. But you can make this with a single colour of beads. If I just bring in actually the project that's on my main beading mat at the moment, that spiral section is made entirely from silver beads. So what happens is you end up with a structure that really emphasises the way that the beads sit rather than the pattern within them. So you've still got a spiral, but you lose that look of two different colours or multiple colours spiralling around each other. So it still works, it's lovely, and I just mention that because if you're quite new to beading and don't have a lot of beads in your stash, you might only have one colour to work with, and that's okay. So let's get started on this. You've got a nice long length of thread here, and what I want you to do is leave at least 6 inches of tail thread, because you can use this to add your clasp on, and I'll show you how to do that at the end. So what we're going to do is pick up our beads to begin with. Now the spiral is created, it's sort of like 2 rows of beads spiraling around each other is how I like to think of it. So you've got one colour that forms what I call the core, and I'm going to pick up 4 of that colour, so those are my A beads if you like. Then you've got a second colour that's going to spiral around the outside. So we're going to pick up 3 of those. So that's 4 A beads and 3 B beads all on the needle, sliding it down the thread and remembering to leave that nice long tail. Just adjust the thread here so my working thread's out the way. Then you're going to pass up through just those first 4 beads, so your 4 A beads. And you're going to pull that up tight so that your B beads are now going to sit on the left hand side. So you've got your 4 core A beads here on the right, your 3 B beads that will form the spiral here on the left. Now we're on to the main stitch technique. So you're going to pick up 1 A bead, 1 of your core beads, and again 3 of your B beads, and you're going to slide them right down to your existing set of beads. Then you're going to pass up through the last 3 beads from your existing core and also the new A bead, core bead, that you've just added. As you pull that up, again these B beads are going to sit next to your central core, but it's very important this bit, you want to flip them over so that they're also on the left next to your first set, and you want to pull the thread tight, because keeping your thread tight is what is going to create a neat spiral rather than a messy loose spiral. So let's look at that again. We've got 1 A bead, your core bead, 3 B beads, your spiral beads. We slide it all along to your body of work, and then you pass up through the top 3 beads in your existing core. So always those 3 beads, and also the new core bead, A bead, that you've added. Pull everything up tight and slide your spiral beads over to the left, and again keep that thread tight. Notice I'm clamping my thread here between my 2 fingers as I work so that it doesn't loosen itself while I'm picking up beads. So again we've got 1A and 3B going on the needle, sliding them down, and we're passing up through the top 3 beads from our existing core and the new A bead that we've just added. Pull everything up tight and flip your spiral beads over. Pull everything tight again. So 1 bead, 3 beads, take it down to your existing work, and we're going up through the last 3 beads from the core and the new bead added. So you're always passing through a total of 4 beads. Remember how we started out with 4 blue beads and 3 red beads? Well, that is your guide to know how many you're passing through. So again, we've got the next set of beads on the needle, and we're going through 3 existing beads plus the new bead, so that's a total of 4 beads. Sliding everything up and flipping that spiral over, pull it all tight. You can see I haven't done many stitches, but we've already got that nice spiral forming. And because I haven't knotted my tail thread or anything like that, you're going to want to keep pulling that tight as well to keep everything nice and firm. So let me keep going here, and I just want to talk through a few things. Firstly, this is just one variation of the spiral. So we've got this 4 beads in the core, 3 beads around the outside edge pattern going on. But you can try that with different proportions of beads, different numbers. So you could see what happens if you had 3 beads in your core and 3 beads around the edge. To do that, you would pick up 3 A beads and 3 B beads in the beginning. Every time you're adding on a new stitch, you're still picking up 1 A and 3 B. But this time, instead of passing up through the top 3 beads, as we're doing now, and your additional bead, you would go through just 2 beads and your additional bead. See what that does for your spiral. So you can play around with the combinations, so maybe you start with 9 beads instead of 7 beads. Try what happens if you use more beads in the spiral outer bit. Basically, lots of experiments to try out here. Now, the other thing you can do is add in more pattern and colouring. So, for example, we'll still stick to our 1A bead for the core, but for our 3 beads along the outside edge, I might do 1B, 1C, 1B. Slide that down. And again, the technique isn't changing, so you're still going up through those 3 existing core beads and your new bead. But suddenly, just get the tail out of the way, we've got the starts of a pattern happening here. So let's just do that again. 1A, 1B, 1C, 1B. And again, get that stitch in place. And by keeping that bead order the same, you're now adding in this sort of contrasting stripe around your spiral. So that's another idea you can play with. And I showed you in my samples some different samples using different beads. Well, again, all you'd need to do would be substitute your B or your C beads for a different type of bead, and you've got a different effect again. So all of that is using the exact same technique, but just by changing up beads or playing around with the quantities and proportions of beads you're using, you can develop completely different looks, which is going to look like you've made a completely different set of jewellery. So I would just carry on using that technique until I've got a rope that's the length I need for whatever project I'm making. I'm going to pause that here and show you in a second what you would do to add a clasp onto that, so that would give you a complete piece of jewellery then. Okay, so I've just got a knee needle threaded onto my tail thread, and I'm going to use this to add on a clasp. Or you don't have to be adding a clasp, you can use the exact same technique to attach this end to an existing part of your jewellery. So remember where I was showing you necklaces where I had a focal section? Well, I could use this same technique to attach this to the beads in my focal section if that's what I needed. It's very simple. Just going to pick up 3 beads. I've got a ring here. It's my little tip. Clasps can break over time. So if you have attached your clasp into the body of your jewellery, then when the clasp breaks, your entire piece of jewellery is basically useless. You've got to remake it all. So what I like to do is find ways of kind of separating the clasp out so that I could replace just the clasp and my beadwork would remain untouched. So one of the ways that I do this is use a ring. So I can then attach the clasp onto the ring later on, and the ring remains the integral part of the jewellery. That's not going to break or damage, and the clasp could be removed from the ring and changed if I wanted to. So anyway, back to this. We've got 3 beads going on. I would put my ring on. I mean, in actual fact, I've got a big ring here that's going to slip over the beads. But if this was a smaller ring, it might get stuck next to the beads. So that's why I want 3 on one side and then another 3 on the other side of the ring. As I've just said, that doesn't really matter because my ring is going to slide around the beads and find its level. So I've got those 6 beads and my ring, or my clasp if you are going to take the risk and stitch straight onto a clasp, or my additional beadwork here. So again, if I was stitching additional beadwork, I would pick up 3 beads, I would then pass through my existing beadwork, add 3 beads on the other side, and we're just going to go back down through that first spiral. So we've now got those 6 beads forming a loop here and our ring or clasp or focal section in place. So I can then pass back up through the original 4 beads from my core, continue on through the beads and the ring or beadwork that I've just added, and back down again through those 3 beads on the spiral. So it's exactly repeating the thread path, and I like to do that as many times as I can without breaking any beads or making the beadwork too stiff, just to make sure that everything is held securely. When I've done that, I would be able to knot here between my beads and then just slide the thread through my work again and trim it off. And you've got your ring there ready to attach the clasp. If I just bring in that sample I had earlier, you can see I've done the same thing, but I've got my 3 beads and my additional beads here attaching straight through beads in the beadwork on my focal section on this. So same technique, nice and simple, whether you want to add on a clasp and make a full piece of jewellery or attach your rope to an existing piece of beadwork. So that gives you everything you need to work in spiral stitch, a few ideas to try some variations. And again, don't forget to check out the blog post because I've highlighted some extra things in the writing there. I've talked a bit more about different bead types and I've linked to all the patterns that you can try if you want to. So I hope that will open up a new avenue for you to explore and let you create some beautiful jewellery to wear or give to friends or sell at craft fairs. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you can enjoy more beading tutorials and explore more about beadwork. So thank you for watching and happy beading!